So Sting has mentioned one opponent who could bring him out of retirement if he gets a chance to face him. And his name is The Undertaker. Oh, Sting, please stay retired. For the love of God, stay retired. Sup, guys? Welcome back to the review space. This is going to be my little opinion on Sting's comments recently. This is from WrestlingInc.com. WWE Hall of Famer Sting recently spoke with Wrestling Travel and revealed that he would come out of retirement for just one opponent, The Undertaker. And this is what Sting had to say. I mean, everyone knows who it would be. Taker. He's the only guy I'd come out of retirement for now. No one else. Sting said. We could just never get it together to make it happen. When I started talking to WWE, he was booked with Brock, and then I did a deal with Triple H, and he had another feud going on at the time. So it was just one of those things we couldn't make happen. But I don't regret it not happening either. I mean, I got to face Triple H at my first Mania, and then wrestle Seth Rollins for the world title, so I didn't do too badly out of that deal. But yeah, now the only person I'm getting back in the ring for is Taker. The 60-year-old Stinger also confirmed that there was no concrete plans for his WWE run before he suffered the injury in the 2015 Night of Champions match against Rollins, which led to his retirement. There really wasn't any set plans for me after the Seth match if I hadn't got injured. The idea was just for me to get to have one-off matches here and there, but I didn't have any planned opponents or anything like that. We were just gonna see what was best for business at the time. So, going with the Triple H typical quote. I really don't want Sting out of retirement. I'm really sick and tired of wrestlers who claim to be retired or they end up retiring from WWE, but they keep coming back. They keep coming back. They keep coming back in wrestling again and again and again. To me, that's incredibly pathetic. You know, the fact is, when you retire out of wrestling, you have to stay out of wrestling. At least out of the ring. I mean, you could still do some backstage stuff. You could still be an on-air personality, like a commentator, a color commentator, or a manager even, or even an authority figure, like a GM or something like that. You know, somebody who sets up matches, kind of like William Regal now on NXT. But the fact that guys like, you know, Ric Flair and even somebody like a Shawn Michaels, and granted with Shawn it took him over 8 years to come back. With Ric Flair, I mean, he started wrestling almost right away in TNA, and I think also overseas in Australia with Hogan. So the guy, after retiring in 2008, at least from WWE, he had that retirement match against Shawn Michaels, and then he started wrestling within 2 or 3 years, all over again. So it was basically meaningless for him to do that, to have that big send-off, that big retirement celebration in 2008 after Mania. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no point of having that big retirement spiel. And also, I think that one of the biggest perpetrators of this is Terry Funk. I mean, how many times has Terry Funk retired, gotten out of retirement, you know, had another match, retired again, had another match, retired again, had another match. I mean, he kept doing it over and over and over and over again. It became an angle. It became a gimmick. It became a part of his shtick to keep retiring and then coming back and then retiring. Like, after a while, it became like this hacky, I'm just doing it because I make money off of it. Because I keep coming back because that was his gimmick. It became a part of his act. You know what I'm saying? So anytime that he would retire, it's like, I don't care. Dude, I don't care. Anytime that he would come back, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not interested anymore because when you retire, you gotta retire for good. You know what I'm saying? You gotta get out of the business for good. Because then what's the point of retiring? And I get it. I get that some of these guys, it's very difficult for them to fully stay out of the business. They gotta make some money. It's probably one of the favorite things they do that they've ever done in life is to be in wrestling. A lot of these guys are very, creative people. They want to have that athletic freedom. They want to be able to just be a star. and have that payday and be able to make money and then have that, the glitz and glamour of wrestling, the fame and glory. And they want to keep coming back to that. But it's like, and also too with Sting, I mean, he's up there in age. The guy's what, in his early 60 or some 60 something year old Stinger. He's been around for so long. He was in his prime back in the early 90s as an athlete, and as far as gimmick wise, he was in his prime in the late 90s as the Crow Sting when he started using the Crow gimmick. And so that was a tremendous time, no doubt, for Sting, and he was one of the most popular stars in that late 90s period, especially during the Monday Night Wars, late 90s Attitude Era between WCW and WWF. It was a huge deal, and Sting sold a lot of merchandise. He was really, really popular back in the late 90s. I believe he was the second best-selling merchandise in 1997, next to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So he was one of the top stars ever in wrestling. It was really, really popular and still is a very big deal. But the fact that he would consider retiring and coming back to face the Undertaker in a potential like a dream match that never happened. Yeah, it would have been awesome back in the day, back in 97, 98, 99, even the early 2000s. If he had jumped ship to WWF, if he actually started going there. Yeah, that would have probably happened. It would have been something to happen along down the road. But at the same time, I just don't care anymore. Both guys are way, way, way past their prime. It's almost like these guys, they just linger on and on and on. I don't care about Undertaker anymore. Any matches, like any new matches with Undertaker against this guy, Undertaker against that guy, I don't care. I have absolutely no desire anymore to see Undertaker come back and have another match, or Sting, much less Sting, who is very injury prone. The fact that he was basically forced into retirement because his match against Seth Rollins over 3 years ago. That was so scary when he had that match with Seth Rollins, and Seth threw him at the turnbuckle. He did a turnbuckle power bomb on him a couple of times, and by the second time he was collapsing in the middle of the ring. He couldn't even run the ropes. He would collapse and basically slump down, and you were like, "Oh my God, this guy is this guy fine? Are we seeing one of the first ever rare in-ring fatalities in wrestling? Like somebody is losing their life. Their life is passing before our very eyes in the middle of this ring. I was so scared for Sting. I was like, oh my God, this guy is going to perish. He's going to lose his life right here. He collapsed, man. I mean, that was frightening. It was kind of like Pero Aguayo Jr., I think, in Mexico, when he was having that match, and I think Rey Mysterio was there, and Conan was there. He was having that match in Mexico, and then Pero Aguayo, he ended up collapsing. And then he wasn't moving anymore, and he basically lost his life. And I thought that the same thing could have happened to Sting. There was a similar feeling. It was like, oh my God, like this guy is clearly not fine. He's way too old to be doing this. And Sting is younger than, Pero Aguayo is much younger than Sting in comparison. When he lost his life in Mexico. Sting is a much older guy. He's obviously, again, well past his prime. He's not in his peak physical performance anymore. He's not a young man anymore in his, late 20s, early 30s, or even in his 40s. I mean, I think Sting's time is done. He's a Hall of Famer. I believe was he accepted in the Hall of Fame? I think he was accepted in the Hall of Fame. Yes. Yeah, that's when he retired, was in the Hall of Fame. He officially announced his retirement at the Hall of Fame. So, he was done. I mean, I have no desire to see Sting in the ring anymore for the love of this business. I don't care. Like, he's a legend, one of the greatest of all time. Tremendous gimmick. His longevity was incredible. And even some of the stuff he did in TNA was kind of entertaining, like when he was doing the Joker Sting, and that was kind of fun, and I feel like even in TNA, he kind of he kind of wasted some of that time in TNA, just as far as like the in-ring stuff. But I can understand why he did it. He didn't want to go to WWE because he felt like he was going to be basically be misused in WWE. And in some ways, he was in some ways. I think the reason why Sting went to WWE back in 2014, I believe he came in 2014 and debuted there in, I want to say, Survivor Series 2014. And so he finally started doing business with WWE in late 2014 because of Ultimate Warrior. Ultimate Warrior was his former partner, his friend or his former friend back in the 1980s as the Blade Runners. They started out together as a couple of like bodybuilder type guys, really athletic young guys in the early 1980s. And then both of them had individual success. They both had face paint. They were both colorful characters, both charismatic in their own right, and they became top stars in their own respective company. Ultimate Warrior in the WWF in the early 90s, and Sting with WCW in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's like both guys were friends, or really close friends, and they started in the business together. And so by the end of Ultimate Warrior's life in 2014, when he finally decided to do business with WWE and return to WWE and go back to Vince McMahon and all that, he was thinking of his family. It was obviously a family security to financially secure his wife and Dana Warrior and his kids and all that, his daughters, so that they could have some financial support. It was an end. A means to an end, or an end to a means to an end, where he might not be a big fan of WWE, and maybe he didn't like fully want to go back just because there was so much bad blood between him and WWE, and there was such a bad falling out between him and Vince McMahon in the early mid 90s, that it took him many years to go back to WWE. It took him 18 years, 2014, for him to come back and finally make peace and be a part of the Hall of Fame in 2014. The reason why he did that was because he knew that his health was failing. I would speculate that he knew his health was failing. He didn't have much time left. And so he wanted to financially secure his family and finally give WWE back that, give them a chance to sell his merchandise, his action figures, be a part of the WWE video game series. I think WWE 2K14 was the first video game to officially, finally have him as a member of the full, the video games again, and kind of have that relationship again, to open up that relationship and finally accepting WWE's open arms again. Be accepted into the WWE merchandising and selling his likeness. Making money off his name, off his legacy, off his what he created, which is the Ultimate Warrior character. And so even now, like Dana Warrior is, I believe she got hired by WWE to work as a writer, as a creative writer for the WWE. So clearly, like Ultimate Warrior's family has benefited with Ultimate Warrior finally coming back to WWE and finally accepting and giving WWE that chance to make money and do business with the Warrior family, and make money again. And again, sell his likeness, sell his t-shirts, sell his merchandise like action figures and trading cards and video game licenses and all that. So it was a way for the Warrior family, Dana Warrior, her kids, and all that, to make some income off of it, to at least have that financial support from WWE. Because I think that Ultimate Warrior, I suspect that he knew that his life was ending, and then he passed away not too recently, not too soon after he got into the Hall of Fame after the Monday Night Raw, when he cut that really ominous promo, kind of almost like telling the future in 2014. Remember when he came on Raw after Mania, the night after Mania, the Raw after Mania, he cut that promo, he put that mask on with the Ultimate Warrior mask, and he was talking about every man has a life, one last breath or something like. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was wild. It was really almost talking about like his impending demise. So I think that he knew. I think Ultimate Warriors, because he would know his health more than anybody else. I'm sure that he knew something about his health, his failing health at the time, so that his family would finally do business with WWE so that they could make money together and have that financial security for his kids and his family. So anyway, that's why I think he came back to WWE. It was a money thing. It was a money thing, and I think that Vince McMahon, that financial relationship with Vince was a very important thing, so that his family could keep making cash and have that continuous income and have that the royalties and all that, and have the have some checks coming in from WWE merchandising and all that. So I think with Sting going to WWE, that's what a part of that triggered him to come back to WWE. A part of that made him want to go back and be like, well, one of my friends, my former friends who had that long falling out with WWE, like he finally went back to WWE, so I might as well do it myself. Now I think with Sting, he saw Ultimate Warriors, the last, his demise and all that, but he saw the financial potential for going to WWE, and finally, I guess in some ways, like swallowing his pride and swallowing his, I don't want to say like like ruining his dignity or like putting down his dignity, but swallowing his pride a little bit and kind of being, what, even if WWE misuses me or whatever, I'm still going to do business with them because they can provide my family with merchandising deals, kind of like with Ultimate Warrior. It's like, like I think Sting realized that he's not going to live forever. Just like with Ultimate Warrior, he understands that. Listen, you only get one life, and you're not going to be around forever. I'm not going to be around forever to support my family and all that, and to keep making money for my family. So I'm going to do business with WWE and finally start getting those paychecks. It doesn't matter if he ends up losing to Triple H or Seth Rollins or whoever they plan on having him face and job out to different people. And then don't get it twisted. Sting was ruined in some ways by WWE because they had him lose to Triple H at Mania. And it became WCW against WWE. It was the NWO, Hogan and Nash and Hall and them. They came out to support Sting, even though, for the most part, like Hogan was huge rivals with Sting back in WCW. But anyway, I know that Sting was technically a part of NWO Red and Black. So he was technically a part of NWO with the red and black face paint and all that. I get it. So he does have an NWO connection. But I don't think he was ever aligned with Hulk Hogan. Like, they were never really, like, accrued together, at least not with the NWO thing. That was a huge feud. NWO, Hulk Hogan, black and white Hulk Hogan against Sting. The Crow Sting. I mean, that was like a big feud. That was the biggest WCW feud, I would say, in the late 90s. So, But anyway, that was that became the Triple H came out with his DX buddies and all that, his DX friends. They came out to support him, so it became like DX and Triple H against Sting and the NWO, and of course the WCW guys lost, and ultimately they were vanquished by Triple H. And I think that was just a way to test. In some ways, I think that was a way to test Sting's I guess ego, or kind of check his pride or whatever. They wanted to kind of test him. They wanted to kind of show that, hey, this guy is willing to lose to our, to the main company guy, Triple H, and it was very symbolic. It was symbolically a way for WWE, WWF to finally put that nail in the coffin and finally say, the biggest star that WCW ever produced, Sting, or arguably at least top two, top one, top two, one of the biggest WCW originals ever, is gonna lose to our top guy, Triple H, our company guy, Triple H. You know what I'm saying? It was a way for them to kind of finally, like, fully rub it in their face and finally have that exclamation point of, like, you know, fully, completely humiliating and burying WCW and their legacy. Like, you know, Sting, you were a huge star in WCW, but you're nothing compared to Triple H. You know, you're just a jobber. You're not as good as our WWF guys. You know, you're not as good as Triple H. You're not as good as WWE. You're not as good. You know, WCW is not nearly as good as WWE. That was just their way of finally defeating, you know, and finally officially, in my opinion, they really put WCW down in that match. I think back in was that 2015? Yeah, that was 2000. That was almost 4 years ago. But anyway, so Sting going to WWE in the first place, creative wise, yeah, he was humiliated. He was made to look like a fool. But on the other hand, he was able to get that licensing deal. Now they're making action figures off of him. Now they're putting him in video games. Now, you know, trading cards, T-shirts, all that stuff. So now he can make money and get those royalty checks, get that sweet, you know, checks from WWE. And so his family gets that. And so they ultimately, Sting's family, his kids or whatever, his wife, etc., they benefit from that relationship, that business partnership with WWE. And so I think that's why he ultimately, finally, after so many years, decided to go. And again, seeing Ultimate Warrior lose his life, but finally making that peace with WWE and making that business deal again and opening up that business partnership again with WWE back in 2014, it made Sting one of, like, oh, okay, I gotta do that too. I gotta think about my family because, you know, his buddy, Ultimate Warrior, is gone. He's gone. You know. So, Sting versus Taker, I have no interest in it. I don't want to see it. In the ring, I know it's not going to deliver. It's not going to be this amazing athletic, like two guys in their prime. You know, it's not going to be 97 Sting against 97 Undertaker. It's not going to be, you know, 2000 Sting against 2000 Taker, or even, you know, much less like, you know, 92, 91 Sting when he was the Surfer gimmick, and Undertaker was the much earlier version of the original, you know, Undertaker with the purple tie and all that. You know, he looked really cool back then, but, you know, we're not going to see anything like that. It's going to be so uninteresting. Like two guys completely slow. You know, they're not going to have any amazing in-ring moments. It's not going to, you know, they're just going to have a stare down. It's going to be a stare down for like most of the matches. Probably going to be a headlock city, you know, just a bunch of wear down submissions. A lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of, like, you know, a lot of protection. A lot of, it's not going to be a great match. It's going to be so disappointing. It's going to be so lame. It's going to be such a weak match if it does happen, which I'm hoping it never does, because I've no interest in it at all anymore. Sting against Taker, yes, that is a potential dream match. It could have happened, and they had an opportunity to do it probably back in 2015, but they didn't. It is what it is. I don't even care. I don't care. Undertaker lost a streak way back in many years ago now to Brock Lesnar. It's not even that big. It's not even special anymore. I just don't care. Both of these guys are old and way past their prime. They both need to retire. Like, both of them. They both gotta go. Like, for real. There's no reason for Sting and Taker to keep coming back to wrestling. I would appreciate that they, you know, keep them as, like, guys that, you know, are still licensing their name and their action figures and, you know, their likeness for video games and stuff like that. And their merchandise and their T-shirts. Like, that's cool. But just stay out of the ring. Like, I don't care anymore about Sting and Taker. I'm so done with them. You know, and I get it that we don't have current stars anymore that's like Sting and Taker. You know, guys like Aleister Black and even Bray Wyatt, they're not that special. They don't feel like a big deal. They're never going to be as big as Sting and Taker in their prime. It's never going to... Because they don't push wrestlers like that anymore. They don't have big deal, like, superstars anymore like that. Those guys are gone. Because they don't push big, larger-than-life characters and gimmicks where they feel so special and so interesting and so new and so fresh. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got Sting, you got Taker, you got Kane to a certain degree, and that's about it. Now, as far as like that dark, coming out, the lights go off, the lights turn off and all that, like that stuff is done. That era, like you got Aleister Black coming out to like rap, rock, kind of a Rage Against the Machine kind of music, and he's kind of I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's an actual Satanist or a Satan worshiper or whatever. He's got all these tattoos, but the guy's like 5'10". He's not jacked up. He's not like super muscular, and he's like on the microphone. He's kind of mediocre. Average mic skills. So he's not that special. He's just kind of like a CM Punk mixed with like Midian. Remember Midian? Oh my god, like that's what he reminds me. He reminds me of like a modern day Midian. He's not like an Undertaker who's like this large, almost like 7 foot tall guy, like imposing guy. You know what I'm saying? Like even Sting is bigger than Aleister Black. Sting, a big guy, 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 250 pounds, like very muscular in his prime. Sting was jacked up back in the day. He got kind of like fat and kind of overweight by the late 90s as the Crow Sting and all that. He got a little bit like out of shape. But even then, like he still had a cool gimmick. Aleister Black is just he's just like a regular dude, like with tattoos and like a rap rock, like new metal kind of theme song. And his theme song is kind of catchy, don't get me wrong, but it's like, we don't have a new version of Sting anymore. We don't have a new version of Taker anymore. Like, these guys were good in their prime. We don't have interesting, new, like, cool, dark characters anymore. Like, that dark gimmick, that really intense, like, new, dark character where the lights go off and it's like a really gothic character, or a really dark, grungy character like Sting that's based on the Crow, this dark comic book character that's all about revenge and coming back from the grave and all that. We don't really have those kind of gimmicks anymore. At least not in WWE, not in the mainstream wrestling. So unfortunately, like guys like Aleister Black, guys like Bray Wyatt, they're just uninteresting. I'm trying to think of like an up and coming guy. Maybe even somebody like a Marty Scurll. Marty Scurll he's got kind of a dark gimmick, I guess, and his music, and the lights go off a little bit, but it's like, the guy is a cruiserweight. The guy's like 5'7". You know what I'm saying? And he's not that interesting. He just has like a cool attire. Like his clothing and all that with the medieval doctor's outfit, with the long pointed beak and all that. Like, yeah, that's kind of cool looking, but the guy's like 5'7", maybe about 170 pounds, 160 pounds. Like, he's not intimidating at all. So we don't have like super cool looking, dark, really scary like gimmicks anymore, or really cool characters anymore, like a Sting or a Kane or an Undertaker. Those kind of guys are they're gone. Maybe the woman can have something like that. Maybe the female division, you might see that with maybe like a Priscilla Kelly. If we ever get Priscilla Kelly on the main roster in WWE, or, like I could see Priscilla Kelly could pull that off. Maybe even somebody like Paige, if she ever does the, the dark gimmick character, which she never really does. She never really did. She was more like I guess like a punk rocker, like a pseudo-punk kind of chick, but I don't know. I think some of the women might be able to pull it off if they were packaged with a really cool, like, dark gimmick, like a dark princess kind of thing. Almost like like a Lucha Underground, somebody like Katrina with Mil Muertes and stuff like that, or even somebody like Cobra Moon, kind of have that dark feel to them, but we don't really have those kind of characters anymore. So, yeah, I don't want to see Sting against Taker, and it's kind of a long-winded video, but anyway, that's my thoughts on this, Sting potentially coming back. I have no desire for him to return. Please don't come back, not in the ring. So that's it for this episode of Review Space. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell button for the latest notifications. And, yeah, that's about it. Until next time, peace.